In this video, we're going to print the trip details using the information we have retrieved so far from the database. So you're going to be using the jQuery UI accordion feature, which means that we're going to have two parts, the heading part and the div part. So let's go ahead and do this. So you're going to have a heading. So let's go for H4. And then we're going to have a div. And that's how we're going to build the accordion. Okay. So later on, we're going to go back to our JavaScript file and write some jQuery code to make sure the accordion works. All right, so now we've got a heading and a div. Now inside the heading, we're going to print this content. So first of all, we want to use the grid system. Okay, so we're going to need a row. You can give the heading itself a class row. That would work perfectly. Okay, then inside the row, we're going to divide our columns as following. So you're going to have two columns for the user and the user picture. And then we're going to have 8 columns for the departure and destination, date and time. And then we're going to have 2 columns for the price and seats available. So let's have our first div with a class column SM2, okay, because we want 2 columns and we're going to do that for small devices. All right, and then we're going to have another div with a class column SM8 because we want 8 columns for this. And then the last one is going to be the same as the first one because we want 2 columns. All right, so now inside the first one, I'm going to build a couple of divs. So inside the first div, I'm going to place the first name, and in the second div, I'm going to put the picture. And then when we move to the next one, we're going to have one div for the departure, another div for the destination, another one for time, and another one for the frequency. Okay, and then when we go to the last one, we're going to have 3 divs, one for the price, one for per seat, and another one for the number of seats available. Okay, so let's start with the first one. So he wants the first name. So the value we need for the first name is right there. Okay. And let's give this a class that we can use later for styling. Driver. Okay. And the next div is going to contain our picture. So we're going to have an image inside the div. Okay, and the source of our image is going to correspond to the picture variable. Okay, so we can give the image a class that we can use later to make it round like that. So let's call this class something like profile. Okay, profile. All right, now let's move to the next part. So the first div is going to contain the departure. Okay, so the styling of the departure text and the actual departure itself is going to be different. So as we did in the trips page, we're going to place the departure inside a span element, well, we can actually look at what we did in the get trips file. Okay, so you can just copy the same code there for the departure, destination, time and frequency. It's very similar. Okay. Now the values are going to be different. We didn't name this departure. We named it trip departure. Okay, so you're going to need to change this to trip departure because right at the top we have another variable departure. Okay, so I'm going to call this trip departure. And the same thing applies for the destination, trip destination. So instead of departure right there, we're going to have trip departure, and then we're going to have trip destination. Okay, so we're okay with that. We'll leave everything else as it is, and as we did in that file, we'll give this part a class journey that we can use to add some styling later. Okay, so now let's move to the last part. So we're going to have the price per seat and then the seats available. And we can get actually the code from there. It's going to be very similar. Okay, so let's just make sure that the variables are correct. Okay, so the price is price and seats available is the same. Okay, I'm going to use these classes later to add some styling. All right, we can also add another class for this one, like journey 2, that we can use later to add more styling. So now we are done with the heading. Now let's move to this div, okay, to add the gender, telephone number, and the comments. So let's give this div a class, more info, for example. So you're going to have a div that will show the gender and the telephone number, and then we're going to have some styling to show that nice border there, and then we're going to have another div for the comments. So inside the first div, let's have the gender, using the gender variable. Okay, so there's no dot there. And then the telephone number in the second one. So to show this, we're going to use an HTML entity. So the code for it is going to be ampersand, number sign, and then for this one, it's going to be 9742. Okay. So if you want to find this, just look for HTML entities and you will find this code. So following that, we're going to have the phone number. All right. And now the next one, is going to be a div. And inside the div, we're going to write about me. Followed by the variable containing more information. Okay, so I'm just going to add a class to this div so that I can come back to it later for styling. Okay, so now we are actually done with the contents, more or less, that we need to print. Okay, so now we are ready to send this data using Ajax and then use it to print the trip details on our page. Okay, so if we look at the jQuery code, we can see that we're going to have a div of ID search results that we're going to use to show either an error or show the trips. So let's just change the ID of the div that we're trying to print. Okay, so instead of search results, let's call it something like trip results. Okay, so let's save, go back to the Ajax call. So if the call is successful, we're going to use the returned data to fill that div. So we're going to access the div using its ID, which is search results. And then we're going to change the HTML content to whatever is returned to us. Okay, so that's going to be either the trips or an error message. Okay. And then we need to use the accordion function. So we're going to need the accordion method. So first we're going to need to select our div, which is the div of ID trip results. And then we're going to use the accordion method. We can place some parameters inside the accordion method. We will come back to options later. All right. So now we're going to have a quick look at our code and make sure that everything is okay before we test it. So let's have a look at our search.php file. So I've got a few things here. So I've got a semicolon missing there. Right, now let's scroll up. So I'm just going to check the query and make sure that everything is okay there. So that's the beginning of the query. We need to make sure that there is a space before adding the extra bits. All right, you've got a space there, there, and there. That's fine. Another one there. Now, if the query is not successful, we're going to write enable to execute the query, and we're going to use the function MySQLi. It's MySQLi number of rows. Okay, so let's save and try this and see if we get any errors. So let's try from Bedford to London. Okay, so there are no journeys. So we can see that the query has been successful. Okay, no errors to show. And if we check the database, at the moment, we only have one trip. So let's add a trip there. So let's add a trip from Bedford to London. Okay, let's also add another one close to Bedford. So Kempston, which is very close to Bedford, to London as well. Okay, and let's add another one. So you've got a little problem here. So when I open the form again, these fields are not hidden. So we're going to go back to the JavaScript file in a bit to fix this. Well, if we refresh the page and open the module for the first time, they're all hidden. Okay, so when we reopen this, we are supposed to have them all hidden. Okay, so now we've got a couple of trips. So now let's go back to the search page and try again. Bedford to London and see what we get. Okay, so you can see some details there. The picture is very big, okay, because we didn't add any styling to the picture. That's okay. All right, so let's just do something here about the picture and see what we're gonna get. So if we look at the picture, we gave it a class profile. So let's open the styling file and style that class. So let's set the height to auto. Also, let's set the maximum width to 100%. That's going to be the maximum it's going to be able to take inside the containing element. And also to make the picture round, let's add a border radius of 50%. So now if we try again, all right, so that looks better. So we still can't see the accordion feature, okay, working. And that's because we haven't included the jQuery UI links yet. So we've done that already inside our trips page. So let's open that page and copy the links from there. So the trips page is right there. So the jQuery UI links are right there. So you got the script and the CSS link. So let's copy that and place this inside our index.php file. All right, so now let's save and try again. And it doesn't work again. And the reason why is because we need to place the jQuery files on top of the jQuery UI files, because jQuery UI needs jQuery to function. So I'm going to take the script from the bottom of the page. I'm going to take also the Bootstrap JavaScript files, and I'm going to place them before jQuery UI. Okay, so let's save and try our code again. And now it looks better. All right. So in the next video, we're going to tidy up these elements and add a little bit of styling.